Need some spicy Time Spiral Remastered reprints, maybe some cool old border cards? Well, you can pre-order Time Spiral Remastered now from our sponsor Card Kingdom by heading over to cardkingdom.com. Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another daily dose of Time Spiral Remastered spoilers. And today, we get the rest of the blue cards. We started in on it a little bit yesterday, but honestly, a lot of the best blue cards just came out, either this morning, late last night, so we've got some good reprints to talk about, some sweet old border stuff, which means we should probably jump right into it. Start talking sweet new Time Spiral Remastered reprints, and first off today, we get a Mythic, a blue Mythic, an Ancestral Vision, and Ancestral Vision, it's a powerful card. Drawing 3 for 0, really good. The problem is Suspend is really slow. This card used to be really expensive. It was actually so good. It was banned in Modern for quite a while, but then it got unbanned. It didn't see that much play, and then it got reprinted a bunch of times, so now it's like $4, which, not a super valuable Mythic to open, but still, not a bad reprint. Today, it mostly sees play in decks that are not actually looking to suspend it. It sees play with, like, As Foretold. In Legacy, it sees play with Cascade decks, where you're trying to, like, brainstorm it to the top of your deck, and then Shardless Agent into it and draw 3 for free, essentially. So that's a main home. I don't think there's any deck in a format at this point that actually is looking to just like suspend Ancestral and wait 4 turns. It's just a little bit slow, and the same thing holds true for Commander. If you look at Commander decks that play Ancestral, it's essentially all decks that in one way or another can play it for free. You got Yidris that cascades into it, Vadrock can keep casting it from the graveyard, Golos, of course, if you hit it with the activated ability, can cast it without paying its mana cost, so you get to cast it even though it has no mana cost. So that's essentially what Ancestral Vision is. It's narrow for Cascade decks, other decks that can cheat it into play, but in those decks, it is really powerful. So even though it's not an expensive reprint right now, I still think it's a decent one, because if we get to a point in Modern, in Legacy, or even in Commander, where there's a lot of decks that are taking advantage of this, the price could rise quickly. So getting more copies out in the wild, probably a good choice, even though it's not a super valuable Mythic to open in your pack today. Speaking of free spells, probably the best main set reprint we've seen so far, Pact of Negation. Just a free counter spell that, yeah, you gotta spend 5 on your next upkeep, but the idea of Pact of Negation is you're not usually getting to your next upkeep, so you get around that drawback pretty easily. But Pact of Negation, it's shown up a few times recently. The list, Masters 25, it's had Invocations, Modern Masters, but despite those reprintings and pseudo reprintings, it's still like a $40 card for the cheapest version. So this is one of the rares that you're definitely hoping to open in your pack. It's going to be a home run value-wise. As far as actually playing with Pact of Negation, it's essentially combo protection. It shows up kind of across formats in decks that are essentially looking to win in one turn. Charbelcher combos, Inverter combos, Ad Nauseam combos, where the idea is essentially, yeah, you're going to have to lose a game on your next upkeep if you resolve this, most likely, but if you're winning right away with Charbelcher, Inverter combo, or Ad Nauseam, there's no next upkeep, so you get around that downside altogether. Also sees a bit of play in Primeval Titan decks, not so much to protect the combo, but for value because you can find it with Teleria West, and you're already playing Teleria West in Bounce Lands, so it's kind of just, a random one-of that you can sometimes tutor up in the right scenario. And the same combo protection plan mostly goes for Commander as well. If you look at Pact of Negation, it's one of those cards that the higher power level of Commander you're playing, the more likely it is to be in your deck. Like if you're CEDHing, this card's great, and you're going to play it to protect your combos, maybe sometimes rarely to stop your opponent's combos. If you're playing more like mid-power Commander, then it loses a lot of its value, because if you're just casting this on a random creature, and then you got to spend 5 on your next upkeep, it's actually a pretty bad counter. So you really only want to be casting it if you're going to win the game that very turn that you're resolving it to get around that 5 mana drawback. But in like Urza, Kenrith, Asika, any sort of combo-y CDH or high-powered Commander deck, Pact of Negation going to be in the conversation as a way to protect your combos. So good reprint value-wise, also sees plays across formats, probably the best main set card that we have seen so far from Time Spiral Remastered. We also got Walk the Eons, which does have a bit of value. I think it's like $8 or $9. Essentially, extra turn spell with buyback, an expensive land sacrifice buyback. Walk the Eons doesn't see a ton of play. It occasionally shows up as like a one-of in Modern extra turn decks if you're just trying to extra turn into extra turn into extra turn. Walk the Eons, yeah, the buyback is really costly, but it's still a 6 mana extra turn spell, which isn't that bad in a deck like that. And then sometimes you get to the late game, you took a bunch of extra turns, you made a bunch of land drops, you get up to like 9 lands, and you could afford to sacrifice some islands to buy it back. Also shows up in some commander decks, although personally I'm not a fan of extra turn spells in commander. They do work really well with certain decks. They're essential to like Narset combos where you're just trying to like chain together your Narset attacks into your win. Really good with Edric because you just flood the board with little creatures. And then you take and draw a bunch of cards as you attack. Then you take an extra turn. Then you can attack with all your creatures, draw a bunch more cards, hit another extra turn spell. Occasionally shows up in ramp-style decks like Tetyova. So Walk the Eons, decent reprint. Expensive enough that you're not going to mind opening it in your pack, and does have some playability across formats. We also got a couple of bulk rares. Drawnu Lichlord. I've never actually seen this card on the battlefield in every format. Kind of the same with Magus of the Future. So, they exist. I guess play them in limited, maybe, or actually maybe not. Drawnu seems very risky in limited. You might end up sacking all your stuff, but, I mean, gotta fill out the set with something. We also got some sweet old border cards. Talrand Sky Summoner, looking really sharp in old border, and even though Talrand is not super expensive, it is a very playable card. In fact, if you look on EDH Rec, it is the number 2 blue commander in the commander format, and commander is the most popular format. It goes Urza Lord High Artificer, and then Talrand number 2. It also shows up in the 99 of a lot of Spellslinger decks. Like, if you are just slinging a bunch of spells, Talrand's great because it's going to make a bunch of Drakes. You can either win the game with them, or use them to block and keep your life total high while you're setting up, I don't know, whatever you're going to do to win the game in your Spellslinger deck. So, Talrand, even though it's not super expensive, really sharp looking in old border. Speaking of awesome old border reprints, we also get Remand, which might be the best modern card that we've seen reprinted in old border yet, or at least on the list. It is one of the like 30-ish most played spells in modern, non-creature spells in modern, and it has been very good in modern for a very long time. Like, sure, it doesn't counter the spell forever, but it's an amazing tempo play. The card draw is huge. It shows up in everything from storm decks to control decks, like blue-white control with Teferi, to various like mid-rangey Stoneforge decks. It shows up across archetypes, and I would not be surprised if Remand ends up being pretty expensive in old border, because I think a lot of modern players are going to end up wanting this one. We also got a bunch of other old border stuff. Paradoxical Outcome sees play in certain vintage decks. Ninja of the Deep Hours, really good in Pauper, little bit of modern play. Repeal, also like fringe modern play in like Blue Trod. Flibblethrift, looks good in old border. No one really plays it, maybe in Commander a little bit. The thing I want to mention about these cards is this gives us a good opportunity to talk briefly about how old border cards are going to work. So when you see these cards, we technically have like Paradoxical Outcome, which was originally a rare. Flibblethip, originally a rare. Ninja of the Deep Hours was a common. The thing is, in Time Star Remastered, all these cards are the same rarity. So there are 121 old border cards in the set. You get one each pack. That means when you open a pack, the odds of getting any specific old border card is 1 in 121, which actually, if you do all the math, makes each old border card roughly the same as a mythic rare in a typical set in terms of rarity. So think of Repeal as essentially a mythic rare in terms of how much supply will be out there. Same with Paradoxical Outcome, same with Remand or Talrand. Doesn't matter what rarity the card was originally, which I think means that some of these cards are going to be pretty expensive. When you look at the set, kind of the last couple of days, we've talked about like, some of the mythics don't really look all that good. There's some bulk rares. Like, yes, we have gotten some all-stars like Pact of Negation today, so there is some good high-value stuff in there, and I expect we're going to see more. But when you're looking at the set and you're looking at the rares, remember that these cards, in my opinion, are likely to be worth a lot more than their original printing. Like, sure, a whatever, Ninja of the Deep Hours might be a 50-cent card for its original printing, but the Ninja of the Deep Hours in old border might be worth a lot more because it's essentially a mythic rare and the old border looks cool, doubly so for really playable ones like the Remands of the world. So when you're looking at the value of this set and thinking about it, remember that these cards are likely going to add a lot more value to the set than maybe you expect if you're just judging them by their old prices, because they're essentially all mythic rares and people really like them. There's a sub-segment of players who just really love the old border cards for their modern legacy commander cube decks, and I feel like that is going to help drive the prices on these cards. Finally today, in the world of lower rarity cards, Mystical Teachings, Careful Considerations, both have seen play in the semi-distant past and still see a little bit of play in certain commander decks, very rarely for Mystical Teachings in Modern, although it does show up in Pauper quite often. So decent reprints, even though not expensive, and then just a ton of random commons and uncommons. Although I did want to mention, Errant Ephemerod. So Errant Ephemerod, you see it up at the top. It looks like a 7-mana 4/4, but if you've never actually played Time Spiral Block Limited before, because of Suspend, it is actually a really high pick. Like, it is arguably a first pickable card. One of the best cards in Limited in the set, because if you suspend it on turn 2, it's going to be coming down as a 4/4 for 2 with haste a few turns later, which actually makes it really good. So if you're going to be playing Limited of the set, don't sleep on the Suspend cards, especially Errant Ephemerod, because it is a good one. Anyway, that brings us to the end of our daily Time Spiral Remastered spoilers for today. So what do you think? What do you think about the old border cards? I was asking this on Twitter yesterday. What do you think they're going to cost? Take like Ponder, for example. Old border Ponder, normal version, maybe $2. How much is the old border Mythic rarity, quote unquote, version going to end up costing? Is it going to be $5, $10 more? I think the foils will be super expensive for some of the good old border cards, but I'm curious what you think. What about the other stuff? Pact of Negation, really solid reprint. All the other stuff as well. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.